the UK cave who drafted in fellow experts and helped plan the rescue of the 12 Thai boys, reveals disaster was very near. Inside the dark, dank labyrinth of the Tham Luang cave complex, the churning waters were rising as heavy rains lashed the northern Thai beauty spot. For Vernon Unsworth, a British cave explorer who knew the subterranean complex better than anyone, it was clear that time was fast running out to find the 12 young footballers and their coach. The 63-year-old financial broker, who acquired his love of potholing in the Yorkshire Dales, but now lives near Tham Luang, was the first foreign rescuer at the scene, and arriving the morning after the team disappeared. 3 days later, there was no prospect of a breakthrough. Surging waters were thwarting Thai Navy SEALs divers who lacked cave know-how or equipment to combat the perilous conditions, narrow jagged passages and zero visibility. The search was going nowhere, the conditions were worsening by the hour and we had no idea where the boys were, said Unsworth, who has spent several years charting Tham Luang's hidden world. We needed the expertise of top world-class cave divers to look for these kids, and we needed it fast. If we hadn't called them in then, it would have been too late. Unsworth tapped a British number into his phone and passed the device to a senior Thai official. At the other end of the line was his friend Rob Harper, who had just returned to Britain after completing a Tham Luang exploration trip with Unsworth, and had put on standby 2 of the world's best cave dive rescuers, John Valanthan and Rick Stanton. Within 24 hours, the trio had flown in to join Unsworth. For the next 2 weeks, the unassuming Britons masterminded a daring search and rescue mission that transfixed the world with its inspiring mix of international cooperation, ingenuity, determination, bravery, and, ultimately, joyous success. The ranks of Thai Special Forces personnel, serving and retired, were bolstered by Australian Federal Police units, American para-rescue airmen, a Chinese dive unit and an array of civilian divers who arrived with cave rescue kit from around the world. Just as crucial to the operation were the volunteer Thai engineers and pump operators who arrived to divert and lower waters that had been so rapidly filling the caves. Meanwhile, the mission's British architects plotted their operations with the help of surveys of the 7 miles of Tham Luang drawn up by Unsworth and Harper. The first priority was as clear as it was daunting: simply to locate the 13. Unsworth knew that some of the chambers where they might have sought refuge would by then have been completely flooded. If they had been caught in the wrong place, they'd have stood no chance, he said as he reflected on the operation. By the time John and Rick arrived, conditions were terrible, and much of the cave was totally inaccessible. It took another 5 days for Valanthan and Stanton to find the boys and their coach, sheltering on a muddy ledge, within 200 feet of the location Unsworth had predicted was their most likely refuge. Valanthan told the BBC that as they emerged from the murky waters, they first detected the presence of the boys and their coach by sniffing the air. Even amid that elation, the scale of the next challenge was emerging: how to extricate them from the mountain. But as the team plotted the rescue, Mother Nature offered some help. Downpours eased for 5 days, giving the pumping and siphoning teams a valuable opportunity to lower the water levels. "We were lucky with the weather, that's for sure," said Unsworth. But we knew that the rain was forecast to return last weekend, and we couldn't leave those boys down there any longer. So we had our time frame. Narong Sakosatanakan, the provincial governor in overall charge of the operation, announced that the rescue mission would be launched on Sunday. Valanthan and Stanton led a team of 13 foreign divers, including 5 fellow volunteers from Britain, 2 Australians and 4 Thai-based Europeans, as well as 5 Thai SEALs who ferried the 12 boys and their coach to safety over 3 perilous days. Osatanakan had reported that the boys were being given a crash course in using scuba gear. But a captivated world still wondered how the 13, none of whom had any diving experience, and several of whom could not swim, would cope with such a dangerous exit, particularly in the wake of the death of a Thai diver. It has since emerged that they did no diving. The boys were heavily sedated, described by one source as being not aware of what was happening, then strapped into a cradle stretcher known as a skid. Rescuers could not take the risk that they would panic or thrash around in terror. Richard Harris, the Australian doctor who stayed with the boys in the cave for the 3 days of the rescue and was responsible for sedating them, said the decision to swim the players out was made when all other options were exhausted. On Facebook, he wrote about the immense pressure on the divers who never dropped the ball for a second. For several submerged stretches, totaling about half a mile, they were carried underwater by divers following guide ropes, the sedated boys breathing through full face masks attached to air tanks. Then, after being squeezed through the most dangerous choke points just before Tham Luang, the cave's now notorious T-junction, the stretchers were passed to rescuers in chambers where the waters had been temporarily reduced to wading levels by the intense pumping operation. Unsworth, who is not a diver, was among the teams that carried stretchers during the 3-day operation. After 17 long days at the scene, he was among the last to leave the cave on Tuesday night, shortly before waters roared back through the tunnels after the rains returned and a pump failed, a salutary reminder of how easily the riveting success story could have ended in disaster. We could hear the water coming. It was time to get out, and everyone was moving pretty briskly, he said, with typical understatement of an episode that others described as a frantic scramble for safety. Unsworth brushed off suggestions that the coach had been foolhardy to take his players to the caves at the start of Thailand's rainy season, just a week before the site is supposed to be off-limits for the monsoon. Nobody's to blame, not the coach, not the boys. They were just very unlucky, he said, noting that the complex had flooded several weeks earlier than previous years. It wasn't just the rain that day. The mountain is like a sponge and waters from earlier rain were raising the levels. Close quote. Indeed, Unsworth said that he had been planning to make a solo venture into the complex on the Sunday, when he instead received the call saying the boys were missing there. I think that I would have spotted the warning signs of rising water levels, but there's certainly no blame to attach, he said. The perils of the mission were tragically illustrated when a former Thai Navy SEAL died in a diving accident on July the 6th after his tank ran out of air. Simon Coonan, who was in his late 30s, was part of a team of former military and commercial divers who volunteered to assist the operation. Tim Acton, a British businessman based in Bangkok, joined their ranks last week, bringing in air tanks and supplies to place along the route and helping to carry out the stretchered evacuees. He described scenes of euphoria mixed with exhaustion on Tuesday evening as 4 Thai SEALs who had stayed with the boys left the cave after the final rescue. "Everyone was cheering and applauding and slapping these guys on the back as they emerged," said Acton, 39, a dive master who has also worked as a commercial diver. The conditions for the rescue divers were incredibly tough and inhospitable: rushing water, no visibility, narrow holes, lots of sharp rocks. It was an extremely hostile environment, even for cave divers of their experience and talent. "It's amazing what they achieved. Sayman's death simply made everyone all the more determined to make a success of the operation. We talked about how some people don't come home from a mission like this, but the atmosphere was of incredible professionalism and focus on the task. Even when you know that you can get out at the end of each day, it's a dark, cold, challenging place to be. You couldn't help thinking about what those kids must have been going through in there, not even knowing if they'd be found." Quote,